Well, hello everyone. I'm out and about again for our mini talk this week as we continue our series on the intentional life. Today's theme is justice, and I want to talk all about the restoration of all things. The restoration of all things. I'm here outside the Salvos in Manly. I've moved from DUI today because when I think about justice and the restoration of all things, I believe this church, which is led by our good friend Luann, but also the Salvation Army as a whole, do a really great job of modeling this to us, the restoration of all things. They work with people that are homeless, they're addicted to drugs and alcohol, and many, many others. And I've actually got a quote here from William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, which will hopefully set the tone for what we're about to talk about today. William Booth says, "While women weep, as they do now, I will fight. While little children go hungry, as they do now, I will fight. While men go to prison, in and out, as they do now, I will fight. While there is a drunkard left, while there is a poor, lost girl upon the streets, while there remains one dark soul without the light of God, I will fight. I will fight to the very end." At our church, we're really passionate about the restoration of all things. And this Sunday, we have our Active Sunday, where we're going to be involved in preparing meals for those that can't quite afford to buy them, and doing some gardening, and also doing a beach cleanup. These are really small things, and we don't believe that our social action and our work of justice should happen once a month. But when we do it on a Sunday, when we do it once a month on a Sunday at what we perceive as one of the most important parts of our week, it reminds us to play our part in the restoration of all things. It reminds us to continue this journey. And through our work with Common Grace and lots of other stuff that's going on at our church, we are playing our part in the restoration of all things. So why do we do it? Why do we do this restoration of all things? Well, Alex, my wonderful wife, and I went on this walk a few years ago in Abel Tasman National Park. Some of you might have been there. It's in the top of the South Island in New Zealand, which is not part of Australia, it's a different country. And we were there and we arrived, and you can do a 4-day walk, you can do a 2-day walk, you can do a 1-day walk. We didn't do any of them because we're lazy. We just did a half-day walk, which was about 6 hours. In order to do this half-day walk, we had to get picked up on a boat, taken into the middle of the national park, dropped off, and then we'd make our own way back. When we arrived, we got off the boat and our feet were a bit wet because we jumped off, and it was like one of those James Bond movies. And Alex, my wife, said, "Oh, I just need to put my shoes on." So she put her shoes on. Then we walked about halfway up the hill and she said, "Oh, you know what? My feet are still a bit sandy. I think I'm going to change to my flip-flops." So at the start of this 6-hour walk, it took us about 45 minutes to get going. We then walked another half an hour, and Alex said, "Oh, Dan, I'm a bit hungry." And so we sat down for another half an hour, 20 minutes, over this beautiful scenery of this beautiful beach, waiting to start our walk, and we had our food. Then we got going. And as we walked along the path, there were these amazing signs that you see everywhere in Australia saying 5 hours to your destination. And I looked at my watch and it said, "You've got 5 hours left to walk." And we only had 4.5 hours left to get there. It was a beautiful walk, and as we walked around these headlands, every time we went around a corner, we glimpsed this amazing beauty. But we were aiming for our final destination, which was 5 hours away, and we only had 4.5 hours left. So we had to kind of power walk around this national park, and I was really sweaty. I had the kind of t-shirt marks, the whole shebang. It was really, really hot. It was really, really full on. And every time we crossed the corner, every time we turned the corner, we could see these beautiful beaches where I was desperate to swim because I was so hot and so sweaty, but we didn't have time to do it. Every time we turned the corner, we glimpsed this beauty, and yet we couldn't stop. Well, we power walked for a little while, and we actually managed to get ahead of time. And right before the end, about 15 to 20 minutes before the end of the walk, we were able to go down to one of those beaches. I was really hot, my t-shirt was wringing wet. Alex was also tired. She'd pretty much been running, trying to keep up with me on this walk. And as we arrived at our final destination, I jumped in the sea, I jumped in the water, and had this moment of this relief of being called off. When we think about the restoration of all things, throughout our lives, between the time we're born until the time we pass, we glimpse this amazing beauty. When we turn around those corners, we glimpse these amazing beaches, but we can't quite touch them. And it's only at the end, in that full consummation, that we see it. And that's what we see in the Bible. The Bible begins with the Garden of Eden, creation, perfection. And it ends back in the garden, restored. If you look at Revelation chapter 22, which is at the end of the Bible, Eden is restored. Verse 1 says, "Then the angel showed me a river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river there stood a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations." In Revelation, we see Eden is restored. The garden becomes a garden city. There's a river through the middle, as we read in Genesis. There's the tree of life. And so our role here on earth is all about the restoration of all things. We play our part in the restoration of all things. At the end of the Bible, Eden is restored. And yet in the meantime, before that moment of when we arrive at eternity's shore, when we go, before that we glimpse amazing beauty. We live in the now and the not yet of the kingdom. And so when we live this intentional life and play our part in justice, in the restoration of all things, we play our part in the restoration of all creation. And we glimpse that amazing beauty. So we'd love for you to join us on this journey, to be involved in an organised activity this Sunday, but also to live a life where we play our part in the restoration of all things. Amen.